seems like it was just a year ago when we were sitting across from each other at Apex with a pandemic raging in China. What have you learned in the past 12 months as a result of COVID?
Well, so much. First, I think we all imagined that our supply chains were fairly complex, but we really had no real visceral experience with how complex our supply chains really were and how integrated they were. So that's probably been the chief thing that I think that we've learned as an industry out of the pandemic is just how intricate our supply chains are. And as we have learned that, we've been striving to, overcome any of those challenges that, supply that you've come to rely on and that was always available when you needed it suddenly wasn't. And so I think the industry has adapted very well to that, but it did present a number
Yeah,
of
they're very fragile. I mean, especially back in the beginning when everybody was relying on just in time for materials coming from Asia. And of course, when these materials get interrupted because of the problems they were having with COVID, that really started to, send a cascading shockwave across the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I remember last year when we spoke. China was experiencing COVID, but really the rest of the world was not so much. And we were talking about how that might impact the design of certain products that people couldn't go to China to help do that design. Well, that just got multiplied across the globe. So yeah, it was. It's been a challenging year, I think, for much of the industry. But at the same time, I feel like the electronics industry really has been the bright spot. We've come to the rescue, and so that just makes me feel really proud to be part of this industry. To say, hey, we helped solve this, moving solutions forward.
Yeah, we definitely did. We certainly stepped up when it came to respiratory systems and all these sorts of things. So, how has the industry adapted to COVID?
Yeah. I think a lot of the industry has talked about being, having Industry 4.0, or as we like to term it, the factory of the future. And there may have been pieces of that, but this pandemic really forced a great realization that there's much more involved in truly having a factory of the future, in terms of having remote access to people, having your customers being able to walk through your factory without ever going in your factory, and building a lot more of that intelligence. So I believe a lot of investment has taken place also, and will continue to take place to really truly get closer to that factory of the future. And another big piece of this that has, I think, brought a lot of awareness is that there are two big challenges that the world faces. One is workforce. We're really trying to we've already have a workforce shortage, and as we bring more and more new technologies into the factory, that pressure is going to get exacerbated. So we need skills training programs, and IPC has been working to develop those kinds of programs so that we can have a very nimble workforce that when there's a job that you never imagined needs to be done, they have the base skills that they can then grow and be able to do that job. And the other area that I would bring up would probably be on the environmental side. We just, in my keynote that we just finished, announced the launch of our ESG for electronics, environmental, social, and governance, and trying to be a more morally responsible company as you develop your electronics products. The fortunate thing about that is when I've talked to various owners and manufacturers, they're doing a lot in this already. So this is just going to help them highlight all the good work they have been doing and building over the last few years.
But I guess you could probably expect a bit more environmental legislation coming in with this new Biden administration anyway.
Well, yeah, I think with the Biden administration, but the European, circular economy efforts are strong, and so, as we as electronics manufacturers tend to develop things for one world. Nobody wants to build a product that's only good in one region, and so when you have strong legislation that has any aspect to it, whether it's a UL rating or a EU regulation or something like that, we tend to, like RoHS or REACH, we tend to build our products to meet all of them, and so we can sell them
Right,
anywhere.
right. So, the supply chains, as we talked about earlier, took a beating, from the lack of visibility to shipping restrictions and even more recently, the fab shortages for the automotive industry. How can we make these things better?
So that's a big challenge, isn't it? I mean, the better we can be at predicting what our needs are going to be, I think those challenges will be, the people can then build up the capacity that they need to meet those needs. The real challenge, especially on the chip side, is, historically, and our chief economist Sean Dubervac talks about this a lot. Historically, when there's been a dip in the economy or a recession, tactile goods have typically dropped and so when we hit that recession a little over, or not quite a year ago, around the April timeframe, manufacturers did what they should do based on historical. They kind of backed off and they refocused their fabs in the chips fabs to develop chips for the things that were selling. So you don't expect more expensive goods like cars to be selling. So they shifted efforts to go more toward the electronics market because that was selling like gangbusters, or toward the medical area. And then when the automotive side just did a sharp jump back, it kind of caught everybody unaware, and you can't just turn, there's like an 11-week turnaround for a fab on the silicon side. So that it just caused a lot of delays and angst that, people were doing the right thing based on history. And so the way to overcome it is to really try to do a better job of projecting out what your needs will be, and then not living on the just in time. That's kind of been our business has been shifting that direction. I think you'll see a little bit of shift back from that in terms of, hey, we only have enough supply to last 2 days. Well, that's good, but not so good. It depends on what situation.
Absolutely, yeah, because we've got this sad situation, which we've now got the automotive guys competing with the consumer people for chips. So it's not a great situation. Although, admittedly, the Bosch factory came online today and started producing, wafers for the first time in Berlin. So there's certainly some light there in Europe. Do you think we're needing more capacity in the United States?
I'm sorry, more capacity in the United
terms
States?
of fab capacity?
Yeah, I think there is an effort to build that. I think you're going to find, because of the pandemic, I think you're going to find more regional capacity desire. So in Europe, in North America, in Asia, you're going to want to make sure that wherever you're building goods, you have a local supply option. It may not be your first choice, but you always have a backup there.
Now, all countries are going to be looking for ways to kickstart their economies coming out of COVID. Does IPC play a role in trying to persuade governments to pass manufacturing incentives?
Sure. We have a strong advocacy effort in DC as well as in Brussels, really working to try to work with policymakers and make sure that the voice of the industry is heard so that they can, the thing that gets most scary is when you get a policy that is constructed devoid of information from the industry. And so we try to make sure that we're bringing electronics manufacturers to the forefront of that conversation. And fortunately, we're getting good reception. There is a desire by those who are writing policies to listen to those who are building them and try to overcome their challenges, but also as they try to move things in a direction that they would like to go, for instance, on this ESG front, they're listening so that you don't cripple an industry while you're trying to do that.
Right, excellent. Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting one that I brought up with Chris earlier today, which was that they just passed legislation here in the UK last week to give manufacturers 130% write-off against all capital equipment sales, which...
Those kinds of opportunities are very exciting. And the other thing is, industrial policy just needs to be clear. And I think that's one thing that we've been pushing on various administrations to try to help move the, kickstarting the economy again.
So another threat that appears to be a wider threat than we first thought it was is security. I mean, we were wrestling with it within IPC from the counterfeits side of it, but it tends to be a lot more nefarious than that, and getting into products that we use on an everyday basis, consumer products. How big an issue is this, and how is it going to play in a digital world going forward?
Yeah, you've hit on it right there, Trevor. As we become more and more digital, this becomes a more and more important issue. And so a lot of our efforts on the Factory of the Future, we have an entire section there that is working on standardization and incorporating security measures into those standards. We have some other trusted suppliers security standards already that exist, like the 1791 that is largely used by the U.S. military and those that supply it. So, but it's not just a cybersecurity, if you will. There's also the human aspect of security as well. And so these standards are dealing with all of that. And it's truly a global effort. Some of our board members from Japan actually have been helping lead the way in this for the last year.
Excellent. Or so. Yeah, it's a huge area. And I mean, one of the scary things was, of course, that the recent Roomba situation was a security issue with the LiDAR sensors. Apparently, that was how they managed to get into the system. Which is really quite scary. So final question, John. I mean, how do you think things are going to pan out this week for IPC with your virtual conference? I mean, obviously we would all prefer to be there in person, of course.
So, I find myself moving from virtual meeting to virtual meeting and missing the eye contact, the shaking of the hands, et cetera, that we normally have, and just seeing everybody's bright and smiling faces. But on the other hand, there are some advantages of doing it this way. So there are a lot of people who, due to travel budgetary restrictions in the past, have never been able to attend an Apex Expo. And this year, we're able to get a lot of people able to watch it virtually. Plus, we've had the ability with certain packages to allow you to have access to it through June 13th. So with that advantage, typically if you're at the show, often if you were just really going at it, you might be able to catch 3 to 5 sessions a day for 3 days or so. This way you can get over 100 sessions and have access to it over 90 days. So we feel very positive that it'll be a positive thing, and we're looking forward to some of the survey information coming back to find out whether we should continue offering a virtual portion of Apex going forward as well.
I think it very much will be a hybrid, whatever way these things come back, for sure. But I mean, have you been able to, for example, attract a much wider audience geographically to come and attend the event virtually?
Yeah, geographically, I think it's about the same. It feels fairly similar because we've always had a decent international presence at Apex that we hold in the U.S. But I just have found that it seems like it's deeper into the companies. So a lot of the same companies are coming, but there's different people that are able to join that typically would not have been.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we're looking forward to an exciting week. We've got lots of guests lined up and things to do, so we're certainly looking forward to it, and we wish you best of luck and every success for the rest of the week, and thank you for joining us today.
Very good. Thanks, Trevor. Have a great day.